Hey there. If you're the one who notices problems before anyone else does, this is for you. You're the one who sees things first. The tension in the room, the teacher sleeping who just might quit. You're already tracking the consequences. Who will be upset? Who will push back? So even on days that look fine or feel calm, your body doesn't fully stand down. You go to sleep tired and you wake up already bracing. Not because today is chaotic or any day is chaotic, but because something could go wrong. And you know you'll be the one that's holding it. It's the responsibility that can sometimes feel crushing. You stay alert, reliable, and steady because you've seen what happens when things aren't held, when communications slip, when standards soften, when everyone assumes someone else will step in. And because you're so good at holding it, more of it finds its way to you, quietly, gradually, until no one sees how heavy it's become. This is not burnout, and this is not a discipline problem. It's what I call the invisible weight of leadership. If you see yourself in this, or even if your breath changed just a little bit, that's enough. And if you want to keep going and learn more, the opening chapter of my book, This Can't Be Normal, What to Do when Success Starts to Feel Like Survival. My book continues this conversation. You can go ahead and download chapter 1 for free and continue this dialogue.
Welcome back to the Schools of Excellence podcast. Really excited to have you all here with me today. So every once in a while, I kind of take a pause from doing my solo episodes where we talk about this can't be normal. We talk about standards. We talk about leadership and accountability. And I like to bring in people that can share their personal stories and experience of how this work is actually happening in the wild, in the jungle, if you will, and what that looks like when it's pressure tested against reality. So I'm really excited to have a really special guest here today. I'll have her introduce herself. She's been a member of Schools of Excellence for several years now. She's become a friend. I've got to meet her in person several times, which is fantastic. So Sharon, welcome to the show. Please, I'll allow you to introduce yourself.
Hi, Hani. Thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be on your show. My name is Sharon Jayakumar. I own a school, a fairly large school in Philadelphia. We're a Reggio-inspired urban nature-based school. I'm licensed for about 218 children. We have close to 200. So it's a wild and wonderful undertaking that I really switched careers to get into because my son, who was 2 at the time, I was looking for places where children and childhood could be nurtured, which I thought was a very basic ask. And I quickly found that it was very variable. And so I made a career switch and I decided to do it myself. And next year will be 10 years.
Wow, 10-year celebration. Oh my gosh. I did not know that. Congrats. That's amazing. So Sharon, tell us a little bit about what was happening inside of your school before you and I connected.
Sure. So we were growing at an incredibly rapid pace without the infrastructure to hold it up, which is a blessing. But at the same time, the pace at which we were enrolling and the demand that we had, we just couldn't deliver the quality that I wanted for the program. Sadly, the bar is low in some neighborhoods. And so if you can just get away with, just having children like alive and ready for a parent to pick up at 6 p.m. But I obviously got into the space because I wanted so much more. And I felt like I could not do it without living, breathing, eating Aspen Grove 24/7, giving up health and time with my kids and all of those things. And then COVID added a whole complexity to all of that. Around which time, maybe just after COVID, honey, I learned about Schools of Excellence and we met.
What did a regular Tuesday feel like in the first, couple weeks of us working together or right before?
Lots of mayhem, unpredictability, not just of what would come your way, but also how you were going to take care of what came your way. Me needing to replicate myself in 5 different places, which is not to say I knew the best way to deliver something. So I was dealing with uncertainty in every area on any given Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm sure this is so relatable and familiar to anyone that's listening, even just here in the first couple minutes. And I think a lot of leaders start listening to this and are like, okay, but my problems are different. So can you share with us a little bit of what were the problems or the breakdowns that kept showing up over and over again, even after you were like, okay, I'm going to build a process for this. I'm going to build an SOP. I'm going to build a system, but things kept breaking. Same problems kept coming back. What were some of those breakdowns?
So, one I would say was as an independent freestanding school that's not part of a franchise or a corporate chain with a how to manual, we were kind of building the plane as we were flying it. So, there wasn't consistency in how we were executing. And even the time to train people, there just wasn't, like we were doing as we went along. And then we started to have a lot of staff turnover, particularly after COVID. Like we had a great honeymoon period when we first opened, where families really needed us in the neighborhood. Teachers were hungry for, or a certain profile of teacher was hungry for a school like ours to really protect childhood. They came our way. And then as we grew, we realized that what we could do as a small group, because it was people dependent, individual dependent, we couldn't do as we kept growing. So then the turnover happened. And some of the turnover, you could say, is a nature of the industry, but a lot of it was there just weren't consistent processes. So to some extent, I didn't know whether people really felt successful, because every day it was a different way. And they were like, how am I ever going to succeed? And then maybe we were letting in the person through the door that we shouldn't be letting it. It was an era where you have a pulse, you can fog a mirror, you're in. So we had to really go back and look at how we were doing things to try to go back to stability.
As you're speaking, I'm thinking through chapter 1 of This Can't Be Normal, right? The invisible weight, the anticipating, the thinking, the constant decision making of, is this the right person? Is this the right thing? Is this the right policy, right? The classic building your plane while you fly it. What were you really exhausted from carrying? Like when you think of the cost, right? Because the thing that's so important to understand is that when you're in that season, right, that you were in, we normalize it, right? We're like, this is just what we have to do. Like we're in hustle mode, we're in growth mode, we're in survival. Like this is what we have to do. But then every owner and every leader reaches a point where they're like, no, like this can't be normal. Like I can't keep operating like this. Can you invite us into that moment? And I'm sure there were multiple moments, but what moment stands out to you?
Yeah, so like shortly after COVID, I started the school with a business partner, who's a wonderful person, but we decided to part ways. And during that time, I actually asked myself whether I even want to do this. What started off as the only reason I was doing it was a desire to make impact. I had a very successful corporate career, and they give you all these golden handcuffs that you don't want to leave, but all I wanted was to create impact, and that was beaten out of me, that joy, that desire to create impact. And I had myself asking, is this what I want to continue in, with or without the partnership? And it was a moment of reckoning. And what got me there was definitely the invisible weight. I felt like I was the only person in the world who could see the things, to care about the things, to do something about the things. I felt like everybody else got to go home and disconnect, and I didn't. And I actually had my daughter the day after I kind of did the signing of the lease. So that year it was like raising two babies. And I say that to kind of give you context to, I had very young children and they needed me. And it was, carrying this weight, was it worth it? Was this big question that I asked. And then, as you were just saying, honey, I felt like, hey, what did I expect? I've taken on this big undertaking. I'm switching into a new industry. We're starting to be financially successful. Surely this is the price I have to pay. So I almost like normalized it for myself. Like no one was normalizing it for me, but like I was normalizing it for myself, as this is what it takes. And if you have to be an entrepreneur, you have to just, put your big girl pants on and deal with all this misery, is what I was telling myself.
It is a lot of what is also socially normalized in entrepreneurship. When you go to conferences, when you go to events, when you even connect with local groups or family members or whatever it is, there really is this narrative that this is the cause for success, which is why this is such a like battle cry and wake up call where I'm like, but no, we've normalized the wrong thing. So I, you asked a lot of different questions. Is this the cause for success? I have young kids. I have this like, and then there's this moment where there's, whether that's God, the universe, whatever you believe in, whoever's listening here, where there's this glimmer and we kind of see something for a small moment. It's almost like the lights turn on, you see a pink elephant, and then the lights turn off again. And in that like split second, you're like, hold on. There has to be another way. I know I asked this question and I feel like you answered it in a few different ways, but I'm curious if we can go a little deeper. What was that glimmer where you're like, this can't be the cost for success? Like I have to go find another way. I don't know if it exists, but I do know this little glimmer showed me that there is another way.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it happened over time. There wasn't like one big aha moment. It happened over time. One is, and what I'm about to say, I think was critical irrespective. Like I really had to remember my why and ask myself that if I walked away from this why, would it be satisfying? Like may come a day where I feel like I've done my best, I've poured what I needed to, I'm ready for a new adventure. But like that was not the feeling that I was wanting to leave because I was fed up, I was burnt out, I felt
seeking relief, I call it. You were seeking relief. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Is it worth it? Sort of. So then I had to like really reconnect with the why and ask myself, you know, am I truly ready to walk away? And when you go into classrooms, you spend time with children, and then God will send that one parent your way who is kind enough to tell you something very special on the day that you need it most, when 10 others are complaining. So kind of reconnecting with my why, around the same time finding out that I don't have to do this alone. And this is just going to sound so naive, but when I took this on, and for a good 4 or 5 years, I was under a rock. I did not know, not coming from the industry, I did not know that there were industry associations, there were peer groups, there were schools of excellence. Like I'm almost in a hilarious way ashamed that I could have been so naive that these things wouldn't exist for any industry. But I was just under a rock, getting from one day to the next in survival mode. And then when I attended the AELL conference, which is where you spoke, honey, and you spoke about the bridge concept, the meta skills, and the people I met, the peers that I connected with, the idea that many people, experienced or not experienced, are walking through the same path, and that there are resources and there is a way, and you don't have to do this alone, like really started to give me a glimmer of hope. And then I worked my way into you and other groups.
I love that so much. I love that so much. So as we started to work together, we had this concept where we have the 5 gears, right? The 5 core areas that every school is always working on: enrollment, parent engagement, staff culture, financial health. And you started to slowly build infrastructure, is what we call it. And infrastructure is multiple different systems, it's standards, it's all these different things all coming together so that the owner stops being the emotional and operational shock absorber of every high stakes decision that needs to happen inside of the organization. I'm curious, when you first heard the concept of installing standards, what did you misunderstand about standards before? And what do you know now about what standards are? Because you're a big systems girl, right? Some context, okay? Sharon has a phenomenal business and financial acumen. So she wasn't coming in here. I know she was saying she felt naive. whip smart, knows how to run a business, knows how to read a spreadsheet. And so she was coming with a lot of this already strong intelligence of business and financials. And she was coming into this world of like, okay, I could probably apply all of these things here. And yet childcare is kind of this own beast of like everything that comes with it. So anyways, just wanted to give some context for those that are listening and don't know you. So what did you believe about standards and what do you know now about a standard?
Yeah. I think the biggest eye opener or realization in a real way, not in a theoretical way, is this: drift is going to happen. That is reality. And how do you come back to something, right? Because we write out a standard or an operating system and we believe that that's going to fix everything. And then we fall apart when it falls apart. And so the coming back and learning as a leader to anticipate that that's going to happen and coming back to it and being really firm that there eventually will be a consequence, and being real about consequences, and being able to understand myself what is the true cost if an important standard slips, and to be able to communicate and socialize that idea so more people have genuine buy-in, that if this slips, there's a far reaching consequence than we can quickly see. So that return to standards, because we're still evolving and learning, and we certainly haven't arrived. But the idea that you're going to rub up against reality. If it's not on your calendar, it's a wish and a prayer. It's not really happening. Like all of those things coming together and telling us that things are going to drift, but here's your way back. Yeah, I think that's the thing. Knowing that there's a way back when things drift has been tremendous for us.
Yeah, I think there's this moment of real peace and relief because when starting in the beginning of this conversation in general, what leaders are always seeking is like, can the next system give me the peace that I seek, the relief that I seek? Is the next spreadsheet going to give it to me? And what you shared so beautifully is that it's not the next spreadsheet. It's what's your return home. It's how do you predictably and reliably re-anchor back to the standard. So I'm actually curious, because again, this concept of the return moment, it takes time to integrate it fully into ourselves, right? I don't believe any of us, including myself, and I've been doing this work for so long, ever have a moment where when a standard drifts, I don't feel this emotional activation of like, are you kidding me again? Like, I thought we had this conversation. Like, why is this happening again? Right. And then I catch myself and I'm like, oh, got to return to the standard. All right, let's re-anchor the team. This isn't like chaos. It's a small, tiny drift. Yes, it's a little bit frustrating, but also this is expected. And I don't like, there's no perfect system or magical step 73 that's going to protect me from this drift. So I'm curious how the return moment has helped steady you when things still drift, even with all this infrastructure work.
It's really helped me with the internal work, right? Like that's like the most important work ultimately that I can do, is the internal work, like the honest internal work of who I am, how I show up, my genuine acknowledgement that like I have miles to go and I'm here to learn, etc. And the idea that there's a way back is so comforting, and that you get to chart that for yourself before you get lost. Because when you're lost, it's very hard to sit there in a sane way and create your roadmap back. But with the help of schools of excellence, the peer group that I've met, definitely the retreat, which was very, very, very good for me. Understanding that you get to chart a course not only to where you're going, but how to get back when you drift, gives you so much comfort. And then that helps you do the internal work and just be honest, like, yeah, I'm going to drift. And your team likes that about you, because if you're showing up with an aura of perfection, it puts them in a hard spot as well.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. And we have the anchor map, which is part of the book. And for anyone that wants access, you could click the link in the show notes. It's connected to our Substack, which we launched recently. I love what you're sharing, Sharon. Again, this just is such a beautiful insight into the level of leadership that you're sitting at, because there's a beginning of entrepreneurship, which is like, where am I going? Where am I going? Like, hustle, 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 hustle. And then there's this beautiful place that we hope to come to as leaders where we're like, and how do I find my way back home? Because yes, I'm consistently putting things out there and I want to grow and I want to move. And I also have to remember that nature ebbs and flows and shifts in these different places. And so when I go off course, will I drift so far into the ocean that I'm encircled by sharks? Or do I know how to re-anchor myself and come back home? Home meaning my steady self, my calm, my presence, my generosity, my beauty inside of me. So I don't ever lose myself while I go after these big ambitious goals. So I love that so much. Can you tell us about, I know you installed several standards, but can you share with us one standard that really changed your school?
I think the gratitude and the staff one-on-ones are very defining for us. We were doing, like, one of our core values has gratitude in it, so we were doing it, but to do it as a standard makes it systematic, puts it on the calendar, there's an accountability, so it gave us all of that. And we started, I think I shared this with you,
It's in the book. For those of you that have read the book, Sharon's in the book. Her story of gratitude is documented in the generosity chapter. So she'll share her story here, but you can also read it.
And in July last year, when we started it in a structured, not because you're in the mood, not because you had the time, but this is what we're going to do kind of way.
Yeah.
I shared with Hani that in July, and my team, I have a team of 3 directors, all the same school, but 3 directors focused on 3 different things. I think there was a part of them that saw this in theory, but it was like, oh, this is going to take work, or this is a new fad or whatever. But in July, we all did the gratitudes, and I did all the one-on-ones, and we have a large school. So I literally from dawn to dusk was doing the one-on-ones. And for the entire month, next month, there were no call outs, and none of my team could say, and even the voice inside of me that said, is this going to work? Like, everybody became a believer at that point. And the testament to that is last week when we were talking about, we've drifted from the one-on-ones and we were bringing ourselves back. And I told the team, kind of like purposefully, I put this question to them and I said, we're such a large school. Does it make more sense for our standard to be once every 60 days? And unanimously, they were like, no, we have to find a way to do the one-on-ones. I actually would have said, okay, if they had said once every 60 days, because it's sort of pragmatic. And I was thinking we'd rather do that than not do it at all or do it very inconsistently. But like they all said, we have to find a way to do it every month, and here are some ideas and suggestions. So that to me was sometimes when you have like a group of believers with you, like that really makes a big difference. So the staff, to answer your question, the staff culture standards of monthly one-on-ones and gratitude have been great for us. And we're just starting out on observations, which we've done in the past, but we're doing it in this systematic way.
Infrastructure build.
Exactly.
So I actually want to double tap on something you just said here, because I love the way you said it. Is when you first introduced the standard and said, this is something that we're going to be installing, you were met with resistance, right? The team was like, is this your new fad? You just came back from a conference. Okay. Like this is, but you stayed anchored and you stayed steady and you're like, we are doing this. And they did it. And then they were rewarded with the feedback that came from it. And so when you say, I got their buy-in, and it's great to have a team of believers, but you didn't hire a team of believers. You created a team of believers through the infrastructure, but you had resistance. Can you walk us through that? Because the narrative in every single room I walk into is, well, I can't do it because I don't have their buy-in yet. Well, I can't do it because I don't have everyone on the same page yet. Well, I can't do it because they're not excited. I need to go find passionate people. And you're telling us right now, and I know this from other people that we work with, is like, yeah, that comes after. You have to go deploy it first.
Yeah. It's I think the proof is in the pudding, and a lot of people, when they see results, like it really fortifies for them that this is what to do. we need to do. And one of our core values is we wonder. So that openness
Mm,
to trying something, just as we value the wonder in children, which is what makes them curious and capable, and the expectation of someone who's a true Aspen Grove player is to have that wonder. And so I use that language a lot with them. And I said, we have to wonder, are we happy with the status quo? Do we have great staff engagement? Do we have all the right people fired up about the vision? If the answer is no, like, what are the things that we're going to try? And here's something that I think intuitively, like, it made sense to them,
mm,
but the work it entailed, they
yeah,
were daunted by. And
yeah.
that 1 month, I don't know if results are typically that quick, but that 1 month really like turned things around very.
Consistency, predictably, and reliably. So sometimes it's 30 days, sometimes a longer. I can't tell you an exact time frame for anyone that's listening, but it's really about your consistency. And I love that you brought up that point of anchoring in values, right? Because a huge part of infrastructure build is not just write the standard, who owns it, what is the rhythm, what's the responses. You have to anchor the standard in a company value. And for those of you that are listening, we have an entire framework of how we do that. It's in our standards install. And again, you could click the link in the show notes for that. And so one of the beautiful things that I love that you did, Sharon, again, wisdom and discernment as a leader and following the infrastructure framework, is we don't look for glaze motivation. You weren't coming to them and saying, guys, if you do this thing for me, then I'll give you guys bonuses. If you do this thing for me, then I'll give you guys raises or buy you Sephora gift cards. You were like, hey, this is our value. We wonder. You anchored them in the values, and their buy-in came from within because they're connected to the company values. And I just, the intentionality that you are installing and deploying this infrastructure, this is what lasts, Sharon. Like, this is actually how you create sustainability in the long haul. And it does take longer, but it's the class's long, short way.
Yes, yes. So true. So true. Yeah.
When you were met with resistance, whether there was this standard or some of the other ones, how did you anchor yourself? What were, and again, it's never one thing, but what were some of the things that you leaned on when your team resisted? And again, it's normal. If you don't have team resistance, you're not pushing them far enough. This is a very important signal to know. If everyone is on board when you introduce something that's challenging, it's not challenging enough because you got to be met with some resistance.
True. And also to have the humility to like say, okay, maybe in this adjustment is a real valid thing, or
Mm,
maybe
sure.
I'm coming up with something that's very grandiose that could be made simpler, like just having that listening ear and trusting that your team is in it with you.
Mm,
So in terms of how I overcame the resistance, I think some of it is trying to get there, like having them accompany me on the journey and say, how can we make this manageable? um, how can we bring wins back? I remember we used to do that during that month in July when I was doing the one-on-ones. I used to bring the wins of the one-on-ones back to our weekly meetings, and often the teacher in their one-on-one may have said a thing or two that's appreciative of someone on the leadership team, or something
yeah.
that is positive about the school, or a win that the teacher had had that they were excited about, and I would funnel it back. And we still do it, except that now every director is doing the one-on-ones and not just me.
Yeah.
But like then people start to see you chip away at it. Resistance is never like one and done. Like you chip away at it, and sometimes as the months went by, and I kind of took it for granted that we'll do one-on-ones, and like they chip away at my resistance now when I ask the
Yes.
question, should we do it once every 60 days? So
And that's partnership and co-creation. That is how you actually stop carrying the invisible weight of leadership. And we actually have real partnership, because now you're not the only one that has to be, quote unquote, the strong one. You're also allowed to show moments of humanity where you're like, gosh, I'm also feeling, and then the team is like, hey, we got you. Like, we need to do this. And to me, that is such a beautiful win when each of you can support one another. And I think sometimes there's really this feeling of like, the leader feels they can never show any kind of vulnerability or any kind of like, oh, I'm also feeling a little bit uncertain here in this moment. And there is a time and place. Obviously, you're not going to, vomit all over your team, but you're allowed to show moments of like, gosh, I feel a little bit uncertain here. And they came to hold you in that moment, hold the school. That is how we build sustainable schools of excellence.
Yeah, and I should mention, honey, because you've been very good at reminding me about this. I did for them what I wanted them to do for the teachers. So I would pour gratitude for the three or four of them, even on the days where like you couldn't find one good thing and you're like so frustrated at the person. But I tried to pour, and when I think they saw how gratitude made them feel, and it kind of cascading effect. And you taught me that it's not because I'm seeing something easily all the time, but to kind of train my eyes to look for it, because there's always something you can be grateful for the person. Yeah.
I love that. What has become possible today that was unfathomable in your mind 6 months ago?
I think that I can do this. I'm sure I have lapses every now and then where you get the occasional voxer from me saying, I see burnout around the corner. But I think the idea that this is possible, I'm not alone, that there is a way of doing this that doesn't need to always include me. I think that's been extremely helpful in the journey. I think it's led me to the hiring of my current executive director. I think I've done it. I hope the jury's out, but from what I can see, um, I think I've done it from a different place. And as you've said, honey, I wasn't hiring someone to replace me and be the central nervous system for the school. I was trying to bring someone on that can be a partner in building infrastructure, whose goal was to not to be the person everything funnels into, but who kind of builds capability for the school. And I don't know that I've looked at it through those eyes hiring, a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought this up, because a lot of times, and again, for anyone that's listening, when they reach a place where they look to hire executive or regional or whoever, fill in the title, that's irrelevant. It's more so of like, I'm hiring this second in command. I'm hiring this, chief of staff. If you don't learn a new way, you end up training the person in the exact same way that you are. And that person ends up absorbing all of the reasons why you wanted to hire them, which is, I'm exhausted, I'm tired, overwhelmed, I'm frustrated, I'm forecasting, I'm anticipating, I can't, you do it now. And then that person now has the same lifeline as you, which is like, okay, how long until they burn out? And then they need to and then we just keep passing down the dysfunction. And that's why I wrote This Can't Be Normal. We can't keep passing down dysfunction. We have to stop it and say, no, success is not survival. We can build sustainable schools. So I love that you've hired from the lens of partnership. We're going to build infrastructure that works for both of us. That's co-creation. What do you think is one of the biggest mistakes that owners make when they're trying to solve their problems inside of their school, whether they're trying to get out of the day-to-day, they're trying to eventually build their school to sell, they're trying to open up other locations? What are some of those big mistakes that you've seen? You're in the industry.
Yeah, and it's the same one that I made myself, right? In those early years, it's going at it alone, believing that your horsepower, your intellect, your ability to work 24/7 is going to be the game changer, right? And then you're frazzled and disappointed when it doesn't. So having the infrastructure mindset, and then pacing yourself, I think is the other thing. Everybody's has asked me for the last 3-4 years, why don't you have a second school? Why don't you have a second school? To the extent that I myself will think, am I a little bit of a failure? I don't have a second school. But you don't have to do it just for the sake of doing it. It has to be right for you. It has to make sense. It has to connect to your why. It can't push you over the edge. If that's what everybody does in terms of growth, it may be right for them and maybe not right for you now. So I think allowing yourself to pace yourself, give yourself grace, those kinds of things help you take a leap when the time comes, Whereas if you just do it, like, it's a long, painful slug. Yeah.
It's a myth of mentorship and community. I know that you're a very strong, independent thinker. You love to listen to yourself and your intuition and anchor. And it's one of the most beautiful things that I love about you. Like, you pause, you listen, you're reflective. You're like, let me journal on that. And so for people that are listening that are independent and strong and really look at themselves as like, why would I hire mentorship? Like, what are some of those myths that people get around mentorship, and what would you tell them? Like, how this journey has supported you?
Yeah, I think one of the myths is this idea that someone's going to hand you the answers, somebody's going to fix it for you, somebody's going to, and then you think to yourself, I might as well Google it or AI it, and have the same for. And I
Yes.
think having a mentor or a community that actually asks you questions, that gives you perspective, that helps you do the work of tuning out the noise and getting strong in what it is that you should do. I think that's one very valuable thing for me, because like you said, I want to be able to trust my voice. And if there's just so much in the environment, how do I filter it out? And I think a good mentor, my conversations with you, with the peer groups at the retreat, help you like listen to your own voice in a different way. And then the other thing is they carry you when the times are tough. And I think like the best of us need that. When you're falling apart and you can't give yourself any grace and you think you've messed up and you've failed and there's no coming back, like, there are people who remind you of who you really are.
Yes.
And they kind of carry you through. And that's been incredibly helpful as well.
I love that so much, right? And it requires relational and emotional risk to accept our humanity, that not only can't we always be the strong one, we don't need to. We are allowed to ask someone to hold this hard thing, and not in a way of me rescuing you. And I don't, and I think that's another myth that happens a lot, is people feel like, oh, the mentor will rescue me. They will, take away all my discomfort. Yeah, I don't do that. The people are uncomfortable when they talk to me. I don't remove your discomfort. I show you how strong you are to sit with that, and hopefully help you find that way back home for yourself, because what you need is different from what someone else needs, and what someone else, and also each season calls upon something else. And that's the beauty of a relationship, where the mentor and you really get to know one another, and what makes sense for right now. Is this the right season? And maybe the next season is in a week from now. Maybe that's the right moment.
Yeah, definitely.
I'd love to share just a couple of sentences and see if you can finish them. And again, to the best of your ability. So finish this sentence. Leadership became easier and lighter when?
When I recognized I wasn't in it alone.
Everything changed when I realized.
Everything changed when I realized that the power, the ability, the capability was truly within me. I just had to find my way there.
So my last question is, for someone that's listening and has come to this moment and is still saying, but my school is different. My situation is different. My city, my state, my zip code, my team, my staff. We're in a hiring season. I just opened a new building. I just hired new staff. I still need to bring in this person. My enrollment is down. We don't have the right profit margin. I think I encompassed all the reasons, but I could probably think of a couple of other. What's your message?
I would say that I was there too. Like, I definitely thought that everything is so uniquely different, and every now and then I still feel like, oh, this aspect is different, that aspect is different. But kind of the red thread of leadership and how you show up as a leader is really truly the same, no matter what your problems are in which areas. And I think that's what a community like this gives you. It gives you the ability to show up as a leader again and again. It's not just important to do it one time. So yes, it's different. Give yourself the endorsement that it is really different, but not different enough that the leadership skills that you have to develop are not going to work in your unique environment.
I love that. Sharon, thank you so much for joining. Thanks for sharing your story and thank you for being a beacon of light for your staff, for your parents, for the community, for, again, This Can't Be Normal it's a wake-up call. It's a mission of bringing real sustainable leadership to schools around the world. And I'm honored that you're part of this. So thank you.
Thank you, Connie.